We are live and direct as I'm putting lotion on my hands because it's just that real as usual. Hey, this is Michelle Talbert of the UnChamber. Thank you so much for being here. This is our second meeting of the day, and we are going to have a really great presentation that I'm super excited to delve into. I'm coming to you here from my co-working space, Her Power Space, which is located here in Lauderhill, Florida, which is in Broward County, South Florida. Yay. Okay, so the way this works is that we have the UnChamber, which is an organization created to bring together our budding entrepreneurs and our business folks who really want to make connections and honestly make coins and get resources, tools, workshops, access to the information to help your business level up. We are taking the traditional model of a co-working space. I'm doing that too. We're taking the traditional model of I got kicked off. It's showing that I'm still broadcasting though on Facebook. Do you see me, Carl, on Facebook?
The broadcast, well, I don't see you, but
it's getting ready to come back. Okay. All right. So thank you. All right. So we rock with it. We roll with it because we're live, right? So the concept behind the UnChamber is to create a community where our entrepreneurs of color, especially Black entrepreneurs, women, we come together and we share resources. We learn about one another's businesses. We get educated on topics of interest to our business. And then what we do is we meet once a month, online only, to have education, which earlier today, Karen Millet says, if you didn't catch her productivity and how to get you a VA on like $5 an hour, like $50 a week, really? She presented earlier this afternoon. Now we are here in Her Power Space. And even though I'm on camera and he's going to be on camera, he's actually sitting here in the space. We are here with Anthony Jackson, who I'm going to bring on camera right now. And boy, do I have a story to tell y'all.
Hello.
Anthony, so happy to have you. Thank you so much for being here. Hi, Anthony's like, hi. You have an echo?
No, I put it on mute.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the great thing about Anthony being here in the space is that he speaks a language that a lot of us don't speak. It's called techies. In 2015, I was really excited. I was an entrepreneur. I had come up with an idea for a piece of a directory, right? I came up with an idea for a website. There were things that I wanted it to do. I had spoken to tech people about scraping sites and all these like sexy words that I had learned along the way of trying to create this website that I knew would be of value to our solopreneur and side hustler community. And so I ended up having different conversations, pouring thousands of dollars into it, hiring someone to build the site. And one morning, we launched in November, and one morning in December, I got on Instagram and I had a DM that said, Michelle, is your site down? And that is the worst thing you can ever get as a message on a social media platform, right, Anthony?
That is definitely true. When people go to your website or use your app and it's not working the first time around, it basically gives a bad user experience. And
they don't come back.
Yeah, because it's their first impression. So,
exactly.
They could just come to your website and it's down. It's like,
moving on.
This later,
Right. And I was blessed that the person actually came to me and said, hey, something's wrong. And so I looked and it was a white screen of death. They call it the white screen of death, right? And I reached out to my developer immediately, right? Because I don't know tech. I reached out to my developer and I said, look, my screen is white. What do we do? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, you built it. What do you mean you don't know? And he literally said, I don't have backups. You told me to build the site. I built the site. Now you have the site. I have no more involvement. And I cried. I literally cried tears. I called our hosting company. They did not have backups, which seemed crazy to me. All of this because I didn't understand how to explain exactly what I wanted, but also to educate myself and understand what I was getting, right? Because I was speaking to someone who I thought was a professional. And so there were things that, number one, I didn't think about. And number two, I just thought, well, that's obvious, of course. Why wouldn't the guy who built the site have a backup for the site? It seemed like common sense to me, but common sense isn't so common, right? And so I've talked to so many other entrepreneurs who have said, I spent thousands of dollars on a website. I don't even know how to make changes to it if I need to make changes to it. I have spent money creating an app, and now the app is outdated and it got booted out of the iTunes store. And just all of these things that as entrepreneurs, we're trying to create a business. At the same time, we want to have this professional presence, and we get what it feels like is taken advantage of, right? Enter 2019. 2019, I met Anthony Jackson of UTV. Anthony Jackson is actually a creative on many levels, and I'm going to let him tell you all about what he does. But the main thing that Anthony is able to do is to understand me when I say to him, I want my website to look like this. I really need it to do that. And he takes that information and he says, okay, Michelle, let me explain to you what that looks like. And I said, Anthony, we got to bring you to our community. You have to talk to our folks about how to create the websites and apps that they need and to be able to not get what feels like to us taken advantage of. So he's going to save us coins. He's going to teach us how to speak techies, and he's going to tell us about what he has going on. Anthony Jackson, thank you for being here.
No problem. Thank you, Michelle, for inviting me to your platform. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to, spread knowledge and try to help other people who are also trying to, better themselves or expand their business in any way possible. So to start, my name is Anthony Jackson, and what I do, I dabble in all sorts of things, whether that's photography, videography, or tech. So one of the things that brought me here today is because a lot of business owners have a hard time translating their ideas and what they want to do to developers. And one of the main things that I hear from developers is that they always find themselves filling in the gaps. What does filling in the gaps mean? Basically, you'll have an idea, say, for example, I want to build the Craigslist of local cat food, for example. And they'll just stop there. They'll tell a developer what they want to do. So on the developer's end, it's like, oh, okay, you want to make another Craigslist clone. So, okay, you just told me that idea. And so what I find some of the hangups with businesses who want to communicate their idea is that they don't know how to talk the techies, as Michelle will say. So that's why I'm here, and I'm going to help you talk the techies or bypass the techies and reach mutual ground. So one of the first questions you have to ask yourself as a business owner is, do I even need a developer? And I bring up that question because that'll let you know if you will be able to save the thousands of dollars that you're putting into this new project. Now, one of the routes that you may want to look down going is to hire a consultant. Yeah, a consultant will basically tell you what's possible. Yeah, even though everyone has like dreams of, doing something new in one industry, the bottom line is that the developers they have a finite libraries that they can use to bring your idea to fruition. Now, with that being said, it's like, if you were to create a new substance and you say, you know what, I got this flubber, for example, idea that I want to create. natural chemical engineer would be like, I don't think that's possible because this is what's on the periodic table and your new substance doesn't exist and it probably won't exist. And that's why you should bring a consultant onto your project to help you understand the limitations of your idea. So that's one of the main things. But from there, if you're able to move on forward, you have to decide, all right, can I create a POC, a proof of concept, or will I be spending a lot of time doing research and development? Now, there's a fine line between the two because you can create the POC, but realize, oh, I need this aspect. And that'll just bring you back into research and development. And while in research and development, you can get to a certain point where you think it's finished, but certain elements are missing, or you'll have to create something else, and that'll bring you back into a new proof of concept that's pretty much branched off from your original proof of concept. So the consultant can step in and tell you from the get-go, okay, this is what you're going to need. This is how you should do it. And this is the type of developer you should look for to bring your idea into fruition. So with that being said, moving on, if you don't have access to a consultant, or maybe their price are like out of your price range, what you can do is basically create a flowchart. And using the flowchart, you can basically give that flowchart to a developer. It's like a blueprint. You know how houses, all structures come with a blueprint? The flowchart is like the blueprint to the development techie world. Once a developer gets their hands on the flowchart, they'll understand the logic and what will be required to, move forward with this. And they'll tell you up front, hey, this blueprint, it needs a little work. And then they can fill in the gaps if needed. Otherwise, without the logic being there, you basically have no site, or a pretty site or app with no functionality. And that's not what we want. So the flowchart is the basic building block of the logic. So if you get the logic working right, then you can add other elements to your project. Now, some sites, some apps may not be the prettiest, but then again, they get the job done. Take, for example, Craigslist. It looked like it was created in 1998, but at the end of the day, it gets the job done and it rakes in millions of dollars every year. Look at Google. If you go to the search engine, it's just one text box and you just type in your information there and it does the job and gets you the results that you're looking for. So not every app or site has to be pretty in the beginning. Once you get your ideas going, then you can build around it and turn that into a business. And another thing that I was told is that when you come up with your app idea, you have to make this the business. I was told a story by a coworker where someone wanted to make a competitor site to Groupon. They had the money, but then once they put the money in, they realized that it required a lot more resources. And my coworker read a book about the creation of Groupon, and the CEO pretty much wrote himself $1 million check. And the money that the guy was providing to my coworker didn't match up to $1 million. Now you see the level of development the folks at Groupon put into this project. Whereas my coworker friend, his funding was a fraction of $1 million. It wasn't quite really $1 million. It was a fraction. And then as the months went on, he realized why the CEO of Groupon put in that $1 million, because it takes a whole lot of development to go into the making of the Groupon website. So moving on, what does a flowchart look like? Now, a flowchart could be created on its own what do you call this? Its own piece of software. They have software out there that'll help you make a flowchart. Some people in the startup community, you usually hear stories of them writing stuff down on a napkin, and basically that's kind of the idea, the simple logic that goes behind your app idea or your project. So let me go ahead and show you what an example of a flowchart is. So here it is right here. And all it is, if you can't draw, I know everybody can draw like simple shapes. And all it is basically this right here, for example, is just a process from beginning to start of when a user logs into a certain app or a website. As you can see here, it's a certain path that it goes down, logical path, where when a developer sees this, they can say, oh, okay, so you have your login page. All right, so that means since you're adding users, you're going to need a database. You see that? And you probably might not have been thinking about databases. So that's where the developer will come in and fill in all the gaps. All right, and have a look at this flowchart here. It's very simple, very rudimentary type of diagram, but this right here is basically the blueprint of one section, specifically when it comes to how users will interact with a certain website. So go ahead, have a look at that, and you could see that it doesn't really require much. Heck, you probably might not even know like the full extent of your idea, but as long as you have something down on the table, on paper per se, the developer can kind of help you fill in all the gaps. And when you're looking for a developer, if that developer isn't asking you questions, then you might want to look for another developer. And that's one key thing when it comes to development. All right. So, don't hear any questions.
Oh, questions. Sorry. Oh, you're telling me to come back. My bad. Oh, see, that was me. My bad. He's looking at me like, are you going to come back on camera, or are you just going to let me just stand here and stare at people? So I know I got questions.
Well, I can't really see the people, but yeah.
So first of all, in the space with us today, we have the amazing Carl Sirius of the Oasis firm. Carl, do you have any questions for Anthony with regard to sort of, because you have a really nice website, right? And people are able to connect with you on your site. What was your, first of all, do you have any questions? Second of all, what was your process like to get your site created for the Oasis firm?
So I got lucky. The first time I was actually upgrading my website about 2 years ago. I was at a conference for credit repair, and there was somebody that specialized in website for credit repair right then and there. So sort of hook up with him. He already had a reputation. But one thing I remember about him is before I could even get to actually tell him what I want, he had a template sheet that I had to fill out to really like generate some ideas so we could actually have something to work with. Now, the issue I ended up running into, this guy actually left the business, got offered a job, and my website has been sort of willy-nilly until that I actually had to kind of like piece out together a team to build me a new website that is launching soon. So my question is there some type of maybe one of those templates online that I could find for myself, run to making sure that I'm not leaving any stone unturned?
Now.
So the question is, just in case folks on watching on website on Facebook can't hear, Carl's question is are there any online templates or any online kind of checklists that we as entrepreneurs looking for sites to be built to ensure that we haven't left any stone unturned when we're speaking with consultants and developers to get our site built?
I know a lot of these, there are templates around. I personally don't know of any templates because I'm on the other end of the table, but a lot of web designers, I know these are designers, people who build out pages and everything. They might have these templates available or on their contact forms, actually, because they're the main ones that want to know more about your project. So I would say try going down that path, or maybe just Google searching, because there's so much stuff out there.
So I think that actually begs another question then. When we are interviewing potential developers and potential consultants, are there things we should look for them to have? Because I've never been presented with a worksheet to sort of tell me what I'm interested in for my site to look like. What I have had people do is say, hey, you can build create a wireframe for me to go ahead and show me what you want your site to look like. And so Anthony, maybe talk to people about what a wireframe is, and then tell us some things that we should be looking for when we're interviewing people to build our sites.
Okay, so what a wireframe is basically a general layout of what you expect the page to look like. Now, it doesn't have to have the full story, but it just gives the designer some idea of where you want to go and the design language that they want.
So wait, hold on. You just said designer, right? Yes. So now we've talked about developers, we've talked about consultants. How are we distinguishing a designer if there is a distinction to be drawn?
All right, so you can look at it this way. So we all know the anatomy of a human body. Yes. So imagine a human body with no clothes on. Now, basically, what built that body was, whatever, how should I say this?
I don't know where you're going with any of this. That's why I'm being real non-committal right here. I don't know where you're going.
Basically, you start out with a human body with underwear on, put it like that. That was created by the creator, for example. Now you have a designer. The designer will be tasked with dressing this human body in clothes, like Gucci or whatever you decide to wear or whatever. That's where the designer comes in with the look and feel. Now, there are some designers that can create this human anatomy and dress it at the same time, but typically designers work with the developers. The developers will create the designers will create something first, and the developer would say, hey, this and this won't be possible, but I can hammer out this and that and this with no problem.
See, now that's starting to sound expensive, but I want to let you finish with the wireframe. So go ahead and walk us through now. You show the wireframe to the designer.
So you show the wireframe to the designer, and the designer will apply his or her design language and let you know, okay, we can do this. This is very popular. And then again, we can lay out the page like this. And if you want this layout, then this is what we have to do to pretty much work within our limited resources if need be.
So then, okay, so you talked us through a flow chart. Do we need both? Is it a good idea to have both a wireframe that's more of a visual, you're literally saying, I want people to log in here and I want people to have an opt-in box that pops up. And then you have a flow chart as to this is the journey, which goes back to what Karen was talking about earlier today about sort of your success journey. Where do you want customers to go when you're working with them? We're putting these together then, both the flow chart and the wireframe as the entrepreneur, right? So
I would say you don't have to have all the pieces, but the main thing that you should have is the flow chart, because from there you're going to build on top of that. So once you have the logic set, everything is working, then you go on to the design and everything, because you want to start from a solid foundation when it comes to development. So once you have situated yourself on that solid foundation, then you can add in the bells and whistles from there.
Okay. And so now let's talk about costs, right? Because we're solopreneurs, we're side hustlers. We're out here looking at Wix like, hey, boo, you're free? I got you, right? Or $29 a month. At what point do we need to determine whether we need to bring in a designer, developer, or consultant? And then what are the costs associated with each of these relationships?
Okay, so the point at which you should bring in a consultant would be, let's say, for example, you started off on Wix or one of these
Squarespace or something. Yeah.
one of these website building hosting agencies. It's going to come to a point where you're going to need to do something custom, and that will be beyond the scope of what that platform is providing you. For example, I know that some of these platforms just started allowing people to have their users log in, and logging in to a website is a pretty big task because you need a database, you need a login page, some form of authentication and security. Because once you let people in your site and they're giving you your passwords, you have to protect all of that stuff. So a lot of these big platforms are just now moving into that. I know Squarespace just recently rolled this out where people can log into the site and you can pretty much charge for your content now. Now, if you're doing something that might be beyond the scope of that, you might want to stand back and say, how can I get this done? I think it's that time to get a design a developer or consultant to help me with the next step. Now, if you don't have that website already built out, I would say just get a developer or consultant in from the get-go. And you can find a lot of developers and consultants on sites like Upwork. Now, the key thing to look for is to see their price, of course, and how many completed projects that they have done in the past and how much money have they earned. Now, if this person completed like 100 projects, but like their overall rating might be in the 80s or something like that, you know, as humans, we all want the best. But their price is in your price range, you can start there just to, you know, build your way up. As long as you have your flowchart, you know where you want to go. Your flowchart is your map. And that's the blueprint for the developer also. As long as you can get your ideas across clearly in that flowchart, then you can use that developer as a starting point.
Okay, so then folks who are watching, please ask your questions because I know, let me see, we got some comments here. Hey, Carl. Hey, girl. Hey, Natasha. Good to see you. For folks watching, please, and you know Natasha, right? The Diamond Butterfly Style Lux. Actually, she has worked with Anthony. We haven't even touched on the video component of what Anthony does with creative, and we're going to come back around to that.
Yes.
But I really want to be sure that we're answering your questions. And, you know, many of us have tried to figure out and navigate, how do I know when to use Wix or Squarespace or WordPress? And even with WordPress, it can get kind of clunky. So at what point can we do this economically when we've tried to do sort of a DIY, like literally, and you know this, the website for her Power Space for over a year was literally a landing page that I just created off of my email service provider because I had so much website building fatigue, right? So Anthony, as people are thinking through, and we're going to switch to apps next, as people are thinking through building their websites, at what point can they bring in a developer to maybe help them zhuzh up or personalize an existing platform like we've talked about with Wix and Squarespace, or do you really have to start everything from scratch? Just thinking economically, what does that look like?
So when it comes to creating websites from scratch with a developer, it depends on how big you want to go and what your budget is. I've heard stories of like when it comes to, you know, developer to consumer, you can find websites for, and I'm starting out at cookie cutter websites that a developer can easily put together. We're looking at, I would say, roughly $1,000 and up.
Right. And that's expensive for people. And then the question is then upkeep, right? Because I've heard people say that they've hired developers and then they can't make changes to their own site. And that can be problematic as well. because then it gets expensive. You have to hire somebody every time you want to make a change to a comma or typo or change a date or something like that.
And you know, that right there, it happens a lot in the industry too, even when it comes to like business to business.
So how do we avoid that?
What's
the best protection for us?
For that, you know, to be honest, that's like saying, hey, how do I not get into a car accident? You know, the best way I would say is to become knowledgeable.
Okay.
Yeah. You might have to go in there and see what the back end is working with, or learn the basics of like the coding language your app or your project was built in. So that way you can have, you know, some type of say so. But then again, you know, as entrepreneurs, we got 1,000 other things going on in our head. And, you know, when you're not knowledgeable in like something, you find somebody else and have them do that. But yeah, this is just something that's known, because like even when dealing with businesses, when two businesses are dealing with each other for app development or web design, sometimes they fall out and the designer leaves, and it's just like, oh, time to find a new one. But the difference there is the money.
Right.
Yeah, the big firms have the money to go out and find it, but then again, they lose out on what everybody loses out on, which is time.
Right. Exactly.
You know, and you know, sometimes the firms looking to hire developers, they might bring someone on board permanently. That happens a lot.
So what about app development then? What if anything of the advice that you've given us so far today changes when we're thinking about apps? Because I have had conversations with developers about trying to create apps, and it's the same thing again. They're like, you want to do what? I'm like, why am I ahead of my time? Like, what is the deal?
Yeah, it's basically having that flowchart, because that's your blueprint to this world.
Okay, so you use it for apps and website development. And then how do we know that we're getting the best price, and that, you know, what kinds of questions to ask? Like, I know that we need to ask the question, how many apps have you created that have been accepted in the Apple Store and the Google Play Store, et cetera? What other types of questions should we be asking when we're getting our apps built?
You could put it this way. The developer should be asking more questions than you should. Because if you're the one asking questions about, like, the most you can do is ask about their background. Other than that, they should be asking you more questions than you are asking them, because they are the ones that have to fill in the gaps and build this out. Now, once you have that blueprint, I'm referring back to the blueprint again, the developer will have an easier path, and they'll understand where you're trying to go. So for example, let's say you're an architect and I have a blueprint probably created by me or another architect. And I say, hey, Michelle, here's my blueprint. And you just read it. You don't have to ask me anything. You just look at it, and then you come to your own conclusions saying, oh, you know what? Nowadays, this roof style isn't the best style. I recommend getting this roof style. And I'm just like, okay, how much is it going to cost? Oh, it might cost $5 more. And I'm like, I could do $5. If not, just leave it as it is. I understand your recommendation, but I'm limited on the cost.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Carl, you have any more questions?
Yeah. So my website, like Michelle mentioned, looks good. The guy that did it, you could say he was somewhat of a designer. Maybe there are certain functionality that really factored in. And now when I had the desire to kind of like do better on my website, or at least I wanted to optimize myself or my business for search engine optimization. And I started running some tests on my website, and I would figure as good as the website looks, it's slow. Like terrible for SEO purposes. And the website is not even built with SEO in mind.
Wow.
It's just so good.
Yeah.
So now that I really wanted it done right, I found myself to the point where I have a person that's an SEO person. And it's like, well, I do SEO, but I'm not a web developer.
Right. You feel like you have to like build this team.
Yeah. And
essentially that's what I'm at.
Right.
So I had to find a web developer come on board, and my stuff is somewhat not the best. I'd be a copywriter.
Right. So now you need a
And I have to
copywriter.
find a copywriter.
Yep.
So I'm saying, if I'm not the best of the best, how many hats I have to account for?
That's a great question. How many hats? If you want the best of the, how you have to be, and you have to be the quarterback, and you don't even know the plays, right? As an entrepreneur, you're like, I have to coordinate all of these people to come and create the site that I have in my head that's so clear, and I'm not even sure if they're the qualified people. Like, I don't even know what to tell them to do. They're supposed to be the experts.
And that's where a consultant comes in. Because
Okay.
a consultant is the head coach.
The
head coach.
Okay.
So the consultant will come in and say, all right, this is what you need. Because think of it generally. When you call a business and you're asking for help, they send you to customer support. And customer support, from there, they can route you to any department that you need. And that's where a consultant will come in and pretty much route you. They're like, all right, so you're building this website, you got to think about SEO. You got to think about how fast the page loads. And then you have to make sure that you're on solid foundation in terms of code, that it works in Microsoft Internet Explorer 7. You know what I mean? Because there are people out there, millions of people still on older systems. And so once that's situated, you got to think about databases. So all the things that you are not aware of, a consultant will come in and say, okay, this is our game plan. You know what I mean? You're the quarterback, and we need some wide receivers, and we need a defensive line, basically to piece everything together for you. And then from there, you just be like, hey, my budget includes this. And then the consultant will say, we need to find somebody who is both a designer and a programmer, a developer. They do exist, but it's going to be not every programmer is a designer, and not every designer is a programmer or an SEO person. And that's kind of what I've been noticing a lot in this industry, is that everybody's either becoming one or super specialized on something good. So I would say that you should find these people who are pretty much multi-talented in design, programming, but with that comes a higher price.
That's exactly what I was sitting here thinking. And this is why people end up on Wix, right? Because you're like, well, at least they got the template and it's cute. Let me just keep it moving. But if you really want to have a robust site or do something like we're working together with, right? For us, it can really be maddening. And then to add the app development piece of it to it, the copywriting, the content creation, we haven't even talked about social media, right? It's like, right? And using your site to market, and is it connected with all the other integrations that it needs to be connected with, right? Because you're saying database, we hear as entrepreneurs, email list, right? We're not talking about a database, we're like email list. What are you talking about, a database, right? I've been using database since 1994. So, just thinking through all those pieces while we're still also trying to build and run our businesses is a lot.
Yeah.
Right. So just to pivot a little bit away from apps and websites to the other hat that you wear in terms of creative content creation. So talk to us a bit about what you do for entrepreneurs and what you do generally speaking when it comes to putting together video content. Like Natasha, who had said hi earlier, and you created great content for one of their events a couple of years back. That was beautiful.
So when it comes to content creation, what me and my partner, Melvin, what we do, we want to take the stress and off of entrepreneurs. We just supply a place for anyone looking to create content to just come, record what they want, take pictures of what they want, and leave. And we'll pretty much manage the rest. And that's the editing, the video editing, photo editing, you name it, whatever. You just leave it with us, and we'll take care of the rest for you. So basically, your mind can be free. I remember earlier we were talking about decision fatigue.
Yes, decision fatigue is real. Is it just me? Carl, you got decision fatigue?
today.
We were talking about this
Yeah.
today. Like literally, we were saying how President Obama, when he was in office, he said, I always wear the same color suit and the same color shirt. All he changes out is his tie, right? Is because of the decision making. Mark Zuckerberg, the hoodie, and it's not because he thought it was cute. It's because he didn't want to have to think about what else to put on, because you have so many other decisions to make when building your business.
Exactly. So we want to make some of those decisions for you, especially when it comes to content creation.
And what about if people aren't local? Can they send you video? How does that work? Or do they have to come to your studio to create the work, the at least the raw product for you to work from?
The raw, yeah, they can definitely send their media to our studio, and we can download it, because then again, who's in the office nowadays?
That's it. That part.
Everybody's working remotely.
That part. Here, let me share your website. There's his website.
So yeah, we take not only your work, but ideas also. So if you have a concept for a television show or a web series, then we'll help walk you through that whole process. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
That's great. Do you have any questions, Carl? Like, do you create a lot of video content for your site yet, or do you plan to, or what do you do in terms of content creation for your marketing?
I'm just starting to sort of lay out the blueprint for me to make content for myself. I'm coming out with like a video every week, addressing the questions, and to be honest, still sort of finding my feet, but I'm still sort of in like the research process, in developing those stories, organizing them, and then I gotta produce the content. I'm kind of, I would say, early on in that stage. Marketing is definitely not my strong suit. Even the people I work with, the VAs, they're literally giving me reminders, do this video. So that's kind of where I'm at. It's something I have to get better at.
Yeah, or hire people.
Yeah, sounds like you're gonna have
it's
to
one of
ask
those things
someone
that
else.
when you're an entrepreneur, you got business, you got time, or you got money. Right. So when you're low on money, you better spend the time, right? And then you could buy time when you have the money. And that's a really dope concept that I've been focusing on a lot, is how do I buy time? So whether that's like the conversation we had earlier with Karen, $50 to free up what takes a VA to get done, that's 10 hours, which at my rate, my hourly rate is 4 figures if you multiply that by 10, right? So I think that this all boils down to whether you're developing a website, whether you're developing apps, whether you're doing productivity and bringing in VAs. The key is to know the value of your time, what you're trying to accomplish, and then do a cost-benefit analysis. If I spend this money, and I now know that I'm working with someone who's ethical, someone who understands my process, understands what I'm looking to create, then this should bring the return on the value that I'm investing.
That's very true.
Do you think that way? Yeah, thank you. So, Anthony, any final words as we begin to wrap up? And folks who are watching the replay, if you have any questions, of course, drop them in the comments. We'd love to hear your questions to make sure that we can address them and get them over to Anthony and get answers back to you. Anthony, do you have any final words of wisdom for our audience?
All right. So any final words is just some key takeaways. The developer that you're choosing, make sure that he or her they're asking you more questions than you are asking them.
That has never happened for me, by the way. I've always asked more questions. That could be the lawyer in me too. Never mind.
And also to have that flowchart blueprint.
Here, let's share that one more time.
This is just a sample of one, but then again, you don't have to fill in all the gaps. That's something you can work with the developer on, or maybe the developer can find a better approach. As long as you have that starting point, this will definitely not only get your foot in the door, but your whole body in the door. So you'll be in the game. And this is the source of truth, basically.
All right.
Once you have that, you can just build upon it from there.
Well, thank you so much, Anthony. I have Anthony's website going across the bottom, watchu.tv. And then, of course, you can connect with Anthony on IG. We want to thank you for being amazing members of the UnChamber community. Thank you to Carl for being here in this space. He's such a great member. And looking forward to learning more about each of your businesses. We're going to have a really great conversation next month. In the space, we will be having, Lord help me. We're talking about your corporate credit. Why do I always stumble over myself trying to say that? We're going to talk about business credit. And I think that's a really, really, really great conversation. Katie Ann Clark, Small Business Mastermind Solutions, will be joining us in the space. And then my mind is completely skipping who's going to be joining us online. But trust me, it'll be good. They're all good, right? So we will see you next month. We look forward to staying connected in the Facebook community. And if you have friends who need this information, these resources to connect your business to get to your next level, please share the unchambercommunity.com with them. And we will see you next month. Anthony, thank you so much. Carl, next month.
I think we have something coming up
next month. What are we talking about? Yeah. What's coming up? Do tell. Do tell.
Me and Michelle, we're going to be working on something special for all creators and entrepreneurs. So stay tuned. You might hear about that.
I got to admit, it's going to be so dope. He wouldn't let me tell it, and then he went ahead and told it. It's coming. It's going to be so dope, y'all. August, just stay tuned. If you're local to South Florida or you're not local, you're going to want to come in that weekend. All right? We will see you soon. Trust me.
In a couple days.
It's coming. It's going to be really good. It's going to be so good. All right, y'all. I'll see you next month.
All right. Bye.
Bye.